Welcome back, fans, to the ECHL Insider. I am your host, Garrett Hunter, excited to bring you our final off-season episode where we will preview the Mountain Division before in 2 weeks we will have our first episode of the 2024-25 ECHL regular season. So let's jump right into it, our final division to preview for you in the off-season. So with this Mountain Division comes a first ever 8-team division for the ECHL, with the new Tahoe Knight Monsters joining this division and the ECHL in October. Super excited for them to come into the league. So why not start the Mountain Division by talking about these new Tahoe Knight Monsters? And really, I don't think this could be any better of a market for the ECHL. You expand further westward, which helps teams like Idaho and Utah get more geographic rivals, also closer traveling times for those division matchups, so that the night-by-night travel becomes a little bit less for them versus like going to Wichita, which is really far, or something like that. They'll have another closer opponent, I think, which is really important for those two franchises and really the entire Mountain Division. Also, with the Tahoe Knight Monsters coming in, they will be led by their owner, Tim Tebow. Tebow also has minority ownership in the Jacksonville Icemen, which, isn't it ironic that Tahoe's first game ever on October 24th will be against the Jacksonville Icemen, two teams that Tim Tebow has. One has minority ownership in and majority ownership in the Tahoe Knight Monsters. So very interesting note there for you. Really excited about this opening night matchup. I mean, you bring in a heavyweight like Jacksonville into Tahoe. Should be a really good measuring stick game for them right out of the gate of opening up this franchise. So really excited for that and to see how Tahoe goes about their inaugural season. Well, in front of me, you see how the Mountain Division finished in the previous regular season, starting with last place Wichita and first place Kansas City. So we will go in that order, talking about these teams, what they did last year, and what's coming up for them in the 24-25 regular season. So starting with the Wichita Thunder, they finished in 7th place, again in the Mountain Division. Just a big disappointment for the Thunder now. 3 consecutive years where they have not been in the postseason. Very disappointed, especially for Coach Bruce Ramsay. He's entering now his 6th season with this team. He's led them to great successes, but also had great setbacks in these last 3 seasons. So a lot of pressure, I think, on him this next season. Got to do better. Got to get this team back to competing in the regular season so that they can be set up for good success come May, June, and in the summer months. And I think when you look at Wichita, they bring back a lot of guys. I think this is a team that could make that next step, but it will be definitely difficult in an 8-team division. Up next is the Rapid City Rush. Rush failed to qualify for the playoffs now for the 3rd consecutive season, and definitely disappointing for Rapid City. You know, they were fighting in that playoff race 2 seasons ago. Not as much of a fight come playoff race time this last regular season, but they were definitely still competitive down the stretch. Just disappointed they weren't able to get it back. But I think a lot of optimism for this team as you look at who they've re-signed. Goalie Christian Prop will be back, and then a lot of new talent coming into Rapid City as well. Guys like Jack Jeffers from Adirondack and Joe Widmar. So I think when you look at this team, this roster they've compiled, I think you got a lot of good veteran players to come back and a lot of new young talent from the ECHL and abroad that you bring in to Rapid City. So definitely will be interesting to see what the Rush can do this upcoming season. And at number 5 was the Utah Grizzlies. Utah was right in the thick of the playoff race all the way through March, April, and even back to February, just right in the thick of it. But they came out 1 game short of the postseason, unfortunately. But Utah, don't hang your heads. What a race it was last season. And think about 2 seasons ago. They were also in the playoff race, and they went right down to the wire, got in the playoffs, and held a 2-0 lead in that first playoff race, in that first playoff series against the Idaho Steelhead. So Utah is a team that historically has been competitive all the way down the stretch for a regular season and the postseason. So Utah coming back, ton of talent. Guys like Dylan Fitz from this previous Utah team come back now to Utah for another season. A lot of veteran players, a lot of returning talent. I think Utah has a lot of optimism that they will be able to make it into the postseason, considering the roster that they bring back from last season and the new talent that they bring in. A lot of great guys. And I think a key to this Utah team is you got to keep being competitive with your top rival, the Idaho Steelheads. You look at last season, yes, they didn't make it to the playoffs, but their biggest rival is the Steelheads, and they played the Steelheads competitive down to the wire, just thrilling games all last year. I mean, if you look at rivalries in the ECHL, this is one of the best. If you go back a few seasons ago, we did a ECHL rivalry episode, but this is one of the best rivalries in the ECHL, and Utah has kept it competitive just down the stretch every game with the Idaho Steelheads. So I think that's definitely a key for them coming into this next season. You got to hang with the best to be the best. Coming in at number 4 last season was the Tulsa Oilers. This was a team that looked comfortable in playoff position down the stretch, but fell off toward the end of the regular season, bumping them to 4th place. And I think that ultimately led to the failure in the postseason, a 4-0 sweep to the Kansas City Mavericks. But Mavericks, not a team that you can be disappointed losing to in the playoffs when they went all the way to the finals. So Tulsa, yes, it was a disappointment to be swept, but they lost to a very, very good Kansas City team. And you look at this roster that comes back in Tulsa, guys like Mike McKee come back for their 8th season with the team. So a very veteran group. Mike McKee, 8 seasons in Tulsa, very impressive. So excited to see him come back, and a lot of other great Tulsa Oilers that will be coming out on the ice for opening night in Tulsa. So excited to see them, excited to see McKee back for his 8th season, see what these guys can do in the 2024-25 season. And finishing at number 3 was the Allen Americans, another team right in the thick of the playoff race. And I think of Allen Tulsa, also a big rivalry in the ECHL. I think as Allen played better at the end of the season in that playoff race to ultimately make it in, Tulsa played worse, and I think that's what got them into this spot. Tulsa finished 4th, Allen finished 3rd, and I think it was just the way they finished the regular season. A lot of momentum for Allen, I think, finishing the season. A lot of crucial home victories that they had to even get into the postseason, and they were riding a big wave when they came into the playoffs, I felt like, but that was quickly ended by the Idaho Steelheads, a 4-1 loss to the Steelheads. But ultimately, can't be disappointed. I think the way the beginning of the season started in Allen was very disappointing, but ultimately, even to make the playoffs after that bad of a start was impressive. And now the Americans bring in a new head coach, a lot of new players, so I think they are poised to make a big run in this Mountain Division. New coach, new players, a lot of momentum from last season. We'll be interested to see what happens there in Texas with the Americans. And finishing in the Mountain Division at number 2 was the Idaho Steelheads. Steelheads wanted to build on their best season ever in the ECHL and the best season any ECHL team had 2 seasons ago, but last season was a little bit of a disappointment. They exited the playoffs in round 2 to the Kansas City Mavericks, a 4-1 loss, but this series, if you guys watched it, way closer than 4-1. That game 5 came down to overtime in Boise, and Kansas City squeaked out with a win and the series victory, but a very, very close competitive playoff series with the Mavericks. And I think the Steelheads, while they are disappointed, you can't be disappointed. You lost to the Mavericks, a very good team, but ultimately coming into this next season, I think expectations again for Idaho are sky high. You made it to the finals 2 seasons ago. You made it to the second round of the playoffs. They want to see this team go win a Kelly Cup. All the success that Idaho's had years past, they want to see it finally pay off with another Kelly Cup. So we will see that pressure on head coach Everett Sheen and see how he manages his roster coming into this next season. Also, a note about the Steelheads, the ECHL releasing a TV series called ECHL Unfiltered will be on NHL Network at the end of September and beginning of October, and they will be focusing on the Idaho Steelheads. So I think this will be a very interesting TV series. Definitely check it out on the NHL Network. and covering this team that had such a pivotal season last year and comes in to this season with such high expectations. And the Mountain Division champions, number one, was the Kansas City Mavericks. Mavericks just dominated throughout the whole season, winning the Brabham Cup, the regular season champion, and ultimately they rolled right into the playoffs. 4-0 against Tulsa, 4-1 against Idaho. Then you go to the Western Conference Final against Toledo. Boy, was that a great playoff series. And I thought it was going to come down to like a Game 7. They finished him off in Game 6, 4-2. It was Kansas City, the Western Conference champion. And then in the Kelly Cup Finals, they went up against the 2-time defending champs, Florida Everblades, and did fall to the Everblades, giving them a three-peat, 4-1. But Kansas City, I know, obviously, you win the Brabham Cup and you fall short in the finals, definitely disappointing. But when you have such a successful season, I think you got to reflect on that and carry that momentum into this next season. Kansas City, obviously, one of the best in the entire ECHL, one of the best in the Mountain Division coming into this season. So I think for Kansas City, you got to bring back a lot of talent, which they did, and they have the expectations, right? Head coach Tahoe have high expectations for this team as they come in to another season. They want to get back to the Western Conference Final, want to get back to the finals, and ultimately hoist that Kelly Cup over their head, which I think they could do. You look at this roster, a lot of talent coming back from that team last year. When you have a season like last year for the Mavericks where you win the when you win the Brabham Cup, you want to bring back as much as you can, right? You want to duplicate that success. And I think head coach Tahoe has done that to the best of his ability. So I think it'll be very interesting to see where the Mavericks are able to go this next season. Well, make sure to subscribe to our channel below, like this video if you enjoyed our off-season content, and we will be really excited to share with you week 1 of the ECHL regular season in 2 weeks. So check us out for that episode. So excited to bring that to you, and we will have the top 5 games of week 1 for you when we come back.